Hello everybody and welcome back to Odin's movie blog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you are doing well. And so today I wanted to do a continuation of something that I covered at the very end of my video yesterday because I think it's really important just to clarify, but also too to have a full context of what's going on. So I want to give a huge shout out to this man, Firewater FX on Twitter. So please go check out his Twitter. Please go support him because this guy just really kept up the fight with this guy that I was talking about yesterday, Brian Young, or at Swank Motron, who just was, obviously he put the image out there of fanboy tears, obviously trying to entice people. And then when people actually started to respond to him, when people actually started to ask him questions and to give him constructive feedback, constructive criticism, he decided just to block them instead of actually engaging with them. Somehow, some way, he was able, Firewater FX was able to keep the conversation going and get it back and forth going. And I asked him, hey, since he's blocked me, could you just keep track of all these things, maybe take some screenshots so that way I can actually see what he's saying, since now he's blocked my content, just to see what's going on with the conversation. And he did. So I want to thank Firewater FX for doing that. And I also want to thank him because now I'm going to go through this entire context so that way people know I'm not just, nitpicking. I'm not just picking and choosing. I'm not just showing what I said and nothing, none of his responses, because I want to give a full context. And also, I want to be able to break down his responses since I never actually got to see them since he blocked me. So I've actually never seen his responses. I got this text, I got this tweet the other day with this file that I was able to get access to, and so this is like the first time that I'm really reading through it. It took me a while to realize that this is what I had gotten, and so I want to apologize to FireFX for not responding to him because it took me a while to realize exactly what it was. But let's actually go through what got the whole conversation started. So as you can know, and as you'll see, there are a few responses of mine that I put in yesterday's video that will not be here because I did respond to a couple of other comments because he was not responding to me. He was responding to other people. He was blocking other people, but he wasn't responding to me. And so I tried to, put, a couple different places to try and engage with him. Again, as I showed you, they were all very, pretty respectful. I was not attacking him personally. I was not being a disgusting person. I was being as respectful as I could be. Obviously, I was still calling him out, but at the end of the day, I think that it's still important to know that when you are asking someone a question, when you're trying to engage with someone, and this person, again, as you can see, up here, just at the very top, you can see that he put the fanboy tears mug up there, and he doesn't understand why this is a problem. So let's actually start from the top of this conversation and also talk about how Firewater engaged in this conversation as well, because I think it's very important. So first we had this guy, Tim. He says, this kind of post is divisive. It does nothing to bring the fan base together. Grow up, mate. And I totally agree with this person because it really is childish for him to do this. It really is childish for him to put up this image and not expect to get any feedback, and then when he does get feedback, to block those people. This goes into what we were talking about yesterday about how there's this safe space that the voice actor for Ahsoka from the Clone Wars has been trying to create on her website, and it's raising people like this, where as soon as anyone gives any kind of constructive criticism or constructive feedback, they instantly just go into their own little safe space, block them, and then just pretend like they just don't exist. And that is just not how the real world works. You cannot expect to be able to interact with the real world and be able to survive in a lot of ways, because if you can't engage with someone, if you cannot engage in thoughtful discussion, if you cannot engage in intellectual discussion with somebody, how are you going to interact with anyone in this world? And so that's what Brian Young hopefully will learn, and because he blocked me, though, I will not actually be able to see if he actually did that. So Brian Young says, I'm sorry you feel that way, but I disagree. May the force be with you. So again, not answering the question, just says, oh, I don't agree with you. May the force be with you. Again, trying to basically just throw it off. And so I saw that, I said, no, that's not that's not good enough, man. So I said, well, it is divisive. You can disagree with the statement all you want, but it's still true. It is still divisive. It is. Not only do you ignore the fact that there are several women who are part of the fandom menace, because when you say fanboys, it kind of limits it to one gender, and that's kind of the concept. You see this in so many different articles where it's white male fanboys that are the ones that are being called out, when in reality, the people who are being critical of The Last Jedi, the ones who are being critical of the current state of Star Wars, being critical of Kathleen Kennedy, are a wide variety of people. Not just men, not just women, and also not just white men and women either. I mean, it is a broad range, a broad spectrum of different people of so many different backgrounds, and it's just I hate that I have to keep repeating myself because it just seems like they don't understand. Again, Jesse Milestone, Anna That Star Wars Girl, Ivan Ortega, Geeks and Gamers, every person who's on YouTube especially, and also a lot of people on Twitter, are just so diverse. And so to just ignore those voices is to be ignorant in and of itself. And so that's the reason why I called him out, saying not only do you ignore that fact, but you also push people away from engaging in dialogue, which by its very nature is divisive. Just saying. And it's true. By ignoring people, by blocking people. One person in particular, Random Game User 42, go check her out as well. She's also a fellow YouTuber, and she puts out some really great content. She was trying to engage with him as well, and she got blocked very quickly. And I saw some of the content she put out there, and there was nothing really crazy about it. There was nothing attacky about it. It was basically just her trying to engage in a intellectual conversation, trying to understand why Brian Young was doing this, just to understand trying to get inside that brain of his. But he decided, no, I'm not going to engage. I'm just going to block. And so not long after I posted this tweet, though, I was blocked. This was the last tweet I was able to put on this particular post because of that fact, and so Firewater picks it up from there. So Firewater says, maybe Star Wars needs to burn. I've never seen a business attack the majority of their customers and survive, but just like socialism, maybe it needs to be run, saying maybe we need to see that this doesn't work so that we can know in the future and learn from our history not to do it again. And I think that analogy does work here with Star Wars. Like, maybe Star Wars does need to burn. Maybe Episode 9 does need to be a flop. Maybe Episode 9 does need to do poorly, because maybe, just maybe, then Lucasfilm and Disney and all these people that are in charge will understand, wait a minute, we can't attack the fans, or we can't just sit silently by while the fans are being attacked. And this guy is going to try and harp on this over and over again, saying, I don't see any kind of attack. And yet this is the person who put a picture of a Fanboy Tears mug out there, and likes to pretend like there's nothing divisive or antagonistic about what that says. It boggles my mind. They don't understand something as an attack, and they don't understand the concept of just being in a very immature way critical of something that shouldn't be. All right, so anyway, Firewater picks up from there, and then let's actually see what Brian Young actually said in response. So, as I said, he's going to say this a lot. He says, I don't think Star Wars has attacked anyone, and stuff like this is only aimed at that vocal minority of serial harassers that, frankly, I would rather have move on from Star Wars anyway. So again, just trying to put it out there, trying to say, oh, well, this isn't for everyone. This is just for that small minority. Again, I at least agree with you that there is a minority. To say that they're a vocal minority, I wouldn't really agree with that. I really do think they are a very, very small subset of a very small group. And just to say that, though, doesn't take away the fact that you don't have toxic fanboys. You don't have anything specific. You just have fanboys. So no, you are putting that picture out there, and it's very easily to see that you're attacking more than just this small subset that you claim to be attacking. But this is, of course, him trying to divert the conversation, him trying to defend himself in a very weak way, and it just doesn't really pan out. It doesn't work out. And guess what? Luke Firewater is going to be able to see that. He says, well, Lucasfilm contributors and employees have attacked the fans. This is all true. Again, Pablo Hidalgo, part of Lucasfilm, part of the overall Star Wars universe, has attacked fans. We have John Kazan, who's attacked fans. We have Ryan Johnson, who's attacked fans. We also have Chuck Wendig, who's one of the writers of the Star Wars novels, attack fans as well, with some very disgusting things. So, yeah, to just completely ignore those things is just to be ignorant of reality. Maybe they should be less sensitive. But at the end of the day, I've never seen a legitimate business work out by engaging in that behavior. Do you have an example, i.e. attacking the fans, of that being successful? Basically, he's just trying to continue the point, saying, when has this ever worked? When has a company either attacked or allowed others, representatives of them, to attack somebody ever been good for business? So let's see what Brian says. Brian says, I haven't seen any fans attacked. I've seen call-outs of bad behavior, though. And this is, again, this mindset where, oh, they're just calling out bad behavior. But when you actually read what's being said, they're generalizing all people into one group. They are just basically just painting with a broad brush. So they might, in their minds, be thinking about this small subsect, but at the end of the day, what they're doing is they're actually calling out a much larger group. They would call someone like Jeremy Geeks and Gamers. They would call these groups on YouTube, these groups on Twitter, these hateful people, when in reality they're not. So to say, oh, this was a call out of bad behavior, no, it is. They have been very large attacks on the fan base, and guess what? It does not work in business. And so here we go. Firewater is going to come back and say, Ryan Johnson has attacked fans. A Star Wars writer said fans aren't customers, despite the contrary. It just seems they don't like traditional fans anymore. Again, I just haven't seen a business be successful engaging in this behavior. Maybe they will be the first one. And again, he's trying to get the guy to answer the question, saying, is this a good business strategy? The obvious answer is no, but Brian Young doesn't even want to admit that there's been any attacks whatsoever. It just does not work. Brian Young continues, I don't think patrons of the arts are customers in the traditional sense. The customer is always right in their interpretation of art, but that doesn't entitle them to anything. And Ryan called a specific subset of toxic fans man babies, which I don't see as inaccurate. Well, again, so you're basically just reiterating what he said, but also you're trying to say, oh, it was a specific subset. No, he basically said anyone who is a critic of him or The Last Jedi is a part of that group. And I'm sorry, that is not only inaccurate, but it's also just downright silly to say those things. And for you to just continue to ignore these things and to say this nonsense and to continue this nonsense just does not help your cause or conversation. And also that other part saying, I don't think patrons of the arts are customers in the traditional sense. If I buy a ticket to a movie, if my money goes into the pocket of Disney, in the pocket of Lucasfilm, if my wallet determines whether or not a franchise continues or whether or not a franchise grows, then I would say I am very much like customer in the traditional sense, because just like any store or any restaurant will put out a certain dish, they want it to be good because they want people to actually buy it. But if you put out a bad product that nobody buys, guess what? You either go out of business or that product goes away. So to try and make this comparison that it's not the same is just, again, not based in reality when you start using actual common sense. So Firewire continues, what is the difference of a patron and a customer? What am I entitled to exactly? I feel like The Last Jedi wasn't a bad movie, but I don't like that Rian Johnson stated he wanted to divide the fan base. I don't get why. I don't like how they are lashing out at their funding. Again, that's an excellent point. And this is from someone who did like The Last Jedi. Again, I'm someone who did not like The Last Jedi, but this person did, and I can respect him for his opinion, but he's making a much better point, a larger point, saying, yeah, I may have liked the film, but at the end of the day, I still acknowledge that Rian Johnson did attack the fans, and that's not a good business strategy. You do not attack the people who are going to be funding your projects going forward. It's absolutely true. And so he continues saying, funding source. So if the fans are customers, who else is paying the bills there? Great question. I'm very confused by your statement and would love an answer to my question about a business attacking fans being successful. Thanks. Again, continues to ask the same question. And this is what happens. You ask one question and they just diverge. They divert the conversation. Just ignore and deny the basic premise, which is just, again, true and based in reality. They just, again, will just completely ignore it altogether. And so he's trying. Firewater is still trying to get Brian Young to answer the damn question. So Brian Young says, I don't think that mentality of expecting something back from an artist in a traditional retail experience is applicable. It is. It's not that if this film was made in an art house, if this film was, the intention of the film was not to make a huge profit, if the intention of this film was not to be a part of the giant Star Wars universe, then you might have a point. But the problem is that it was a part of the Star Wars universe. It is a large, big budget film. It is a film that a lot of money was put into, expecting a lot of money in return. So you cannot say the same thing, because when you make a big budget film, when you make a film that is made to make money, then yes, absolutely, they need to listen to and engage with their fans, because it's the fans who will drive that forward and will drive that to making more movies and obviously to making more money. Again, Brian Young just does not understand that. Firewire continues, but this and these artists are part of a larger corporation that relies on customers' money to survive. Exactly what I just said. My movie ticket money, as well as millions of others, funds Lucasfilm and Disney. Do we not have the right to criticize? Absolutely. I'm not sure what your point is. Again, I would love to know his point too. Brian says, sure, they need ticket sales, but the groups engaging in harassment or are overly critical of Last Jedi make up a small percentage of that. It's really not even worth considering beyond the problems they cause in fandom. But again, not basing reality, not really engaging with the question. I'm sorry, to say that the people who are critics of Last Jedi is a small group. Did you see Solo? Did you see how the fact that it was that group of people that stayed home that made Solo lose $200 million? That's a point I made on another one of his posts, and he kind of just ignored it and said it didn't apply to what we were talking about, which is just lunacy, because, again, it's a Star Wars movie. Star Wars movies used to be able to make money just by putting Star Wars on it. This was the first film to not make money, so obviously what was the difference there? Oh, wait, that's right, the backlash from The Last Jedi. And again, he's putting all the blame on who? The fans. He's putting all of the blame on the fan backlash, even though he will not say that Solo, again, if I were to ask him a separate question saying, do you think the fan backlash led to Solo losing money? He would say no, and he would make up some other excuses. So it's funny that they love to blame the fan backlash, but then they also don't want to blame the fan backlash when it's actually right to do so. So Firewire continues, how do you define overly critical? The small percentage I would challenge. Solo lost money, remember, due to poor customer service and customers not turning out. Very poor customer turnout. Oh my goodness. So again, this person is on fire right now. Brian Young. I think that was my nice way of saying actual racist and misogynist and loverly entitled fans, because people who didn't like The Last Jedi but still love Star Wars will be back. Again, you obviously are not paying attention to the box office, because that's just not the case. Unless you're trying to tell me that $200+ million worth of fans out there are a bunch of racists and misogynists, then you are just totally off base. And once again, we see these people, again, these SJW mindset people, bringing those words back when they obviously have no idea what they mean. racist and misogynist. And I would ask them, give me some examples, and I guarantee the examples that they would give, one could easily poke holes in, because that's usually what happens. Just because there might be one person out of a group of 1,000 that is an actual racist or misogynist does not mean you could say, oh, there's this huge group of fans, there's this huge vocal subgroup of fans. No, you can't do that. It does not make any sense. All right, so Firewire continues. Are some of the mainstream criticisms throwing away almost everything The Force Awakens set up, Rey not being a deep enough character, Finn and Poe wasted, Rose Tico being poorly written, valid? Or is it just everyone who doesn't like the movie is a piss poor human? How does one prove an opinion about, let's say, throwing away the setups for the Force Awakens, right or wrong? Brian says, by showing where that isn't the case. But it is the case. You can look at The Force Awakens and all the things that it sets up, and guess what happens in The Last Jedi? It throws them all away. Because again, what was his whole mindset? What was Brian Johnson's whole goal? To subvert expectations. He said this countless numbers of times, and yet people just want to ignore what the man himself said. This is the man who also said that he was a bad writer, and yet people continue to defend his script, saying it's a brilliant script. Oh, we're going to give it a Saturn Award, when he's even admitted that he's not a very good writer. And so again, this person just puts very quickly, by showing where that isn't the case. Well, prove that it's not the case. Give me proof that The Force Awakens was not totally essentially done away with, narratively speaking, in The Last Jedi. Please show me the evidence for that. Firewire continues. What's your take on Rian Johnson saying he wants half the fans to be pissed off? He has said that. He says he wants to make movies that make 50% of the audiences happy and 50% of the audiences sad. Guess what? He did that even more so with The Last Jedi, so that's a very good question. Brian Young, some of my favorite movies are like that. Mother, The Fountain, Eyes Wide Shut. Getting a Star Wars movie with that level of artistic integrity was a treat for me. You do not do that with Star Wars, though. Star Wars, what's the point of Star Wars? It's to build a gigantic universe and to make money. Guess what it's starting to do to the Star Wars universe? To make it not make any money, and also to pretty much limit that universe in such a small way. The fact that you put this in the same, if the fact that you put The Last Jedi in the same conversation with Mother, which is probably one of the worst films that has been made in the last 10 years, is just not helping your conversation at all. And oh my goodness. Firewater. Fair enough, but a lot of traditional fans see Luke Skywalker as a wasted opportunity. I can't disagree. I think the whole crux of your argument is, well, the fans will show up for 9. They didn't show up for Solo, so there really is no argument to say that they're going to show up for 9. I'm not so sure if I believe that anymore, not to mention that is beyond arrogant. It is extremely arrogant to say, you know what, oh, we'll make crap, put Star Wars on it, and then people will show up. That's absolutely arrogant, and Brian Young is just continuing on this conversation. So Brian Young says, here's my reasoning on Luke and why it's consistent through The Force Awakens and all of his other appearances, and it's a sci-fi article. So this guy is not even willing to explain in his own words what's going on. Instead, he would rather put a sci-fi article. How The Last Jedi got Luke Skywalker right? Well, we pretty much can tell just from using our eyes and our ears that there are huge inconsistencies between the Luke Skywalker that we knew and the Luke Skywalker that we got. And for them to try and say, oh, it was perfectly explained in the flashbacks is just not accurate. I'm sorry, but you cannot explain to me how someone who is so hopeful, who would not even kill his own father, is all of a sudden going to try and kill a child. That does not make any sense whatsoever. So, again, Brian Young is just totally off base here. Firewater, fair enough. However, I don't think there's enough people with that mindset to help Episode 9 crack $1 billion. I agree. I don't think it's going to reach $1 billion. Maybe I'm wrong. It is what it is. I just wish that Lucasfilm would handle their PR better. It's pretty atrocious. It really is bad, because not only do you have Lucasfilm just staying silent on a lot of these things, but you have people who are direct representatives of them attacking the fan base, namely Rian Johnson, Chuck Wendig, etc. Brian says, I don't think they have a responsibility to police creatives. Their official accounts are doing fine. No one is giving Universal hell for Trevorrow shooting his mouth off. Is it because they simply agree with him? Again, I don't really know what you're talking about with Trevorrow shooting his mouth off, because he seemed pretty straightforward on a lot of the things that he's been saying recently, especially about fandom. So there's probably a reason why they didn't attack him, because they understand you do not attack your fan base if you want to keep making money. As far as, policing creatives, you're the person that kind of wants things to be policed online anyway. So again, I don't understand where you're coming from with that mindset. And also policing creatives, well, if that creative mindset is going to lead to a film or in a franchise losing money, then yeah, if you're a big studio, if you're a big executive, you're going to want to police that a little bit, because it's going to cost you money. All right. Fire says his message is positive to the fans, so it's universally accepted. Damn right. When you attack your not customers, it simply generates less revenue. I believe Solo is a symptom of The Last Jedi and how many people were displeased with it. Should Lucasfilm gamble with 9? It's an excellent point. Again, just look to the numbers of Solo, and you really just cannot deny the fact that that is going to have a tremendous impact on 9. We look to the fact that $700 million less was made by The Last Jedi, and that has now continued on to Solo, and it's very likely that's going to continue on to Episode 9 too, because, there's no evidence, there's no financial evidence to show that episode 9 is going to be successful. Brian Young says, I don't think they are. I don't think they are either. They're not a single reliable source of box office analysis that says disgruntled Last Jedi fans had anything to do with it. That's because they're all from the same source. That's because they're all biased. That's because all of them are choosing to ignore all of those things. And that's the problem. If you actually just look at the raw numbers themselves, you can just easily analyze them and understand that a lot of it has to do with The Last Jedi. You can just look at The Last Jedi, week 1 to week 2, almost a 70% drop. Why would that happen? Why would a drop like that happen? Maybe because there was a huge backlash. Maybe because a lot of people were pissed off. Why do you think the user reviews were so low for that film? Probably because it was not a very good film. When you had the guy himself who made the film saying, I want to make movies that half of audiences like and half of audience hate, guess what? He succeeded in that even more so. And so for you just to ignore that and to, again, just live in that tiny little bubble of yours, it's not helping you, and it's not helping anyone else that agrees with you at this point. So Slayer Raven added in on this saying, I saw it and enjoyed it, but I can't help feel that its failure was due to The Last Jedi. It was a good movie and should have been more successful than it was. Most people whom give bad reviews, I don't believe actually watched the film, so to me it clearly looks like a response to Last Jedi. Exactly. Again, he even points out saying there are some people who gave a bad review who didn't like it. Well, guess what? That still shows that The Last Jedi had a part to play in that story. Brian Young, I haven't talked to a single person in real life who didn't see it because of Last Jedi. It was because of a crowded movie season and they didn't feel like they had time to catch it. Again, maybe the people that you hang out with who have the same mindset and beliefs that you do, maybe that's the reason why they had a very different, perspective. So for you to say, oh, in real life, all the people that I experienced didn't feel that way, it's just being ignorant of reality, because again, it does not back up the box office numbers. Again, we've had Star Wars films that have opened up in May that have done significantly better than Solo did. We've had movies that have gone up against other films that have still done very well. So that is an invalid argument when put to scrutiny. So once again, you're also still not answering the first question that Firewater actually asked, which is attacking fans a good business strategy? Slayer Raven, maybe, but I have my opinion of the film stands by. Please accept that our individual anecdotal experiences cannot possibly speak for the majority of anyone. It was a good film. Why did it do so poorly? An excellent question. Brian Young, there's a lot of analysis that about why out there. None of it has to do with the boycott, and it didn't do that poorly. It didn't do okay. So this is again talking about Solo. It didn't do that poorly. It will eventually earn its money back. I did not realize that losing over $200 million was not doing that poorly. So this guy has already shown with that one comment that he has no idea what he's talking about. This is a person who is just living in that bubble, talking to those people in real life who just agree with him and are just going to keep, repeating everything that he's saying. And obviously he has not looked at the numbers for Solo, because if he actually did, he would realize, oh, wait a minute, Solo is a gigantic box office bomb and there's no way it's going to make its money back. To try and say, oh, Blu-ray sales, etc., there's nothing to say that people are going to buy this movie on Blu-ray. There's no indication of that. Will it make some money? Sure, because people will buy almost anything these days. But to try and say it's going to make $200 million back in Blu-ray sales is just naive at this point. Slayer Raven says, I don't know, man. Hope you're right, but I'm seriously doubting it. So this sounds like this person's actually more on his side, but still being outspoken. I think you're underestimating the impact of the customer base. But I will agree it's not going to be a majority of the customer's base reactions. Most people just want to see a movie, but hardcore fans going to hurt. I agree with you. And we've talked about this before. If you even have 20% of the audience fan base, which I think is a very generous number for the number of people who are pissed off, they make up, if you just look at the statistics, hardcore fans at 20% make up 80% of the profit, because they're the ones that go to see the movie on opening day, who go to see it multiple times, who buy all the merchandise, buy the Blu-rays, etc. So to lose that portion is definitely going to have a huge financial impact. So again, this guy, Brian Young, is just ignoring all of these facts that we know very well. Brian Young continues, there's a lot of analysis about why out there. Okay, so this is just going back to it. All right, so Brian Young, how fast did 4-day passes at Celebration sell out? That's probably a better indicator. So he's just going to ignore the box office sales and then point out Star Wars Celebration, which is just stupid because, okay, Star Wars Celebration has done well on its ticket sales. That does not speak to the overall fan base. There were people who hated The Last Jedi, who hate Rian Johnson, who bought tickets to Star Wars Celebration because Star Wars Celebration is about more than just those things. And also, some of those people are hoping to make some kind of splash at Star Wars Celebration and are even scared that they might not even be welcome into Star Wars Celebration. So that's a terrible example, once again, to bring into it. And then it goes on, and then Firewater ends it with an excellent question. So Brian Young says, I know too many hardcore fans who haven't dwindled their habits for me to think that many are spending less. And then Firewater answers just perfectly, well, how do you explain those poor toy sales? And it's just true. The toy sales have been miserable. The Last Jedi's Blu-ray sales have not been good at all. You look to Solo, losing $200 million plus at the box office. These are all things that we can look at. These are all tangible facts and figures that we can look at, and we can make very wise assumptions as to why that is the case. Because if you actually follow the money, which is something that I always try and do, if you follow the money, you look at the fact. Again, $700 million less that the Last Jedi made. Why is that the case? What happened? What was the biggest change between The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi? What was the biggest change? We look also to the fact that The Force Awakens only had like a 30-40% drop between week 1 and week 2. The Last Jedi had a 70% drop. Why is that the case? These are questions that we need to ask, and also the answers then become quite clear. And then the biggest indicator is absolutely Solo, which again is going to lose $200+ million at the box office, and people are just still choosing to ignore that. So guys, what do y'all think about this? As I said before yesterday, and I still recommend you try and reach out to Brian Young. Again, I'm not saying to attack him. I'm not saying to go after him. What I'm saying is I think you should try to engage with him. And if you do decide to do that, please send me some screenshots of that conversation, because I would love to hear his response, because it doesn't sound like he is, and Firewater even contacted me saying he has not answered my original question, and he still also didn't answer the toy sales question either. So this is a guy that just does not want to actually answer the questions, just wants to dance around them with stuff that's just not true, that's stuff that's just, again, not based in reality, and it's just really sad to see that. So what are y'all guys' thoughts on this? Please let me know in the comments below. I would greatly appreciate that. And also, please, if you like this video, hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe if you haven't done so already. We're at 1,400 subs now, which is just amazing. I'm just so thankful to everyone here, everyone that's been a part of this community. I am going to be on Geeks and Gamers live stream on Thursday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. So if you like Geeks and Gamers, if you like my content, please join us then. I will try and keep an eye out for you in the comments, but obviously it's going to be a lot bigger than the traffic that I get on my channel, but I'm still very excited for it, and I'm also very thankful to Jeremy at Geeks and Gamers for giving me that opportunity, and I'm very excited. So thank y'all so much for watching. Have a great day, and as always, God bless.